Hades is an incredible roguelike game. You play as Zagreus, who is Hades' son. Zagreus wants to visit his mom, who lives on Earth, but unfortunately, Zagreus is stuck in Hell. In hopes of escaping, he travels through the many stages of Hell, blasting through enemies and bosses while collecting currency, boons from the many gods, and upgrades to his weapons. Zagreus spends much of his time fighting, until he eventually dies and must restart the run. But he doesn't have to start from scratch. While many of his upgrades he finds throughout his run only help him get as far as possible, he also collects things like elixir and keys that help permanently upgrade himself and even unlock and upgrade new weapons. To finally escape, he must compile a great combination of boons and upgrades so that he can obliterate anything in his path. Or, he can be good at the game. But we'll shelve that trap for later. The point is, to escape Hell, Zagreus has to become a mass murderer and kill hundreds of enemies. What if we didn't do that? What's the point of finding our mom if she's disgusted with what we've become? Can you escape Hell without killing any enemies? The rules of this challenge are simple. The Y and X buttons are permanently banned. The A button is also banned. Kind of. The A button controls the cast function, so we can never press A in battle. But to select boons, we have to use the A button. So, semi-banned. And finally, I started out by allowing the call function. But if Zagreus is calling the gods to come and murder his enemies, he's still committing a crime. Assisted murder is still very much a bad thing, so the ZR button is also banned. Now, you might be wondering how we can possibly go through Hades' many rooms and finally escape without murdering a whole bunch of enemies. Are we going to pull some crazy out-of-bounds shenanigans? Are we going to hack the game? No, what we're doing is very legal. There are several boons that affect your dash in the game, which, as you may have noticed, is seemingly the only function in the game that we have left, besides walking around. What we'll be using in our run specifically is a boon called Thunder Dash. This boon causes the lightning bolts to be left behind whenever we dash, and if an enemy just happens to wander their way into that bolt of lightning and suddenly take damage, Zagreus isn't at fault. He keeps walking into rooms full of monsters, dashing around their attacks to avoid a horribly painful death, and after a minute or two, all the monsters are gone. Zagreus isn't committing any crimes. He's a little confused as to where these monsters and his hearing have gone, but any judge would accept him as innocent. I tried the challenge many times before finally getting it, but before I go into the victorious attempt, we have a couple of things to go over. Firstly, the Mirror of the Night. Here's a picture of my loadout. The reason that those two in the middle don't have any darkness invested in them is that they don't help the run at all. And then we have my keepsake. So for the beginning of the run, I would always select the Thunder Signet as we need the Thunder Dash to begin the run. And with my Thunder Signet maxed out, I often got it as an epic boon. The weapon obviously doesn't matter, but I picked the bow because I hadn't completed an escape with it. And the save file that I'm using is in Hell mode, but I only use 5 heat because Hades is a pretty hard game, and I'm not very good at it. Anyways, let's get into the run. We start off with Thunder Dash, although it is only a rare boon. I very easily make my way through the first couple of rooms, not really picking up anything useful besides some darkness that grants life up, which brings my total life to 110. And we now finally see our first good reward, a boon from Zeus called High Voltage. This is a great boon, and it makes any lightning affect a larger area. So the lightning behind our dash now affects 72% of a larger area, which makes enemies much more likely to wander their way into it. We then enter a Chaos Gate and get a free 40 HP life up, as the punishment is you lose life whenever you use your special attack, which is something that we already can't do. But I then find myself in the first boss, and it is kind of a train wreck. We have to fight the Doomstone. Out of the 3 options that we had to fight, Doomstone is my least favorite. Normally, the Doomstone is relatively easy to defeat. You avoid the lasers and punch, slash, or shoot it to death. But to damage it, I have to wildly dash around. So I often found myself in a laser's path and my hit points started dropping fast. I started the fight with 91 hit points. I had used my Stubborn Defiance and still ended up on 21 hit points. This boss sucks, but we managed to make our way through it. As a reward for killing this boss, we got the Curse of Vengeance boon from Ares, which damages enemies who damage us. Although it is kind of nice, it is a little underwhelming for such a close boss fight. But we must move on. I picked up some more boring loot before making it to the final boss of Tartarus. In this run, Electo. This fight was a little scary, not because of any of her attacks though. It was more that I somehow kept dashing into traps. I don't know what happened during this fight, but all of my damage came from traps. But overall the fight was pretty easy. It's the first major boss and I've gotten a decent loadout, so we take her down and collect the elixir and gemstones, and with one kingdom of hell conquered, I continued my way up to Asphodel. Now, Tartarus was easy. The enemies are very simplistic with simple attack patterns that you can take advantage of to not take very much damage. And it's the first part of the game, so of course it's easy. But now we move on to Asphodel, and the difficulty curve goes up pretty significantly. Besides the enemies getting harder and a lot more of them having armor, there's also lava everywhere. This is usually more of a minor annoyance in normal playthroughs, but when I'm dashing around like crazy, it's pretty easy to land on lava and start burning, so I'm going to have to be pretty careful to not lose a ton of HP to this. Before we move on to Asphodel, I did decide to change my keepsake in the transition between the two kingdoms. Since the Thunder Signet has had its use, I switched out for the Broken Spear Point, which grants me 1.25 seconds of invincibility every 7 seconds. This is really nice to avoid extra hits and getting comboed on. As I start my way into this furnace of a death plane, I find a useless hammer lying around to get Thunder Dash upgraded to epic rarity, before I find a crucial shop. In this shop, they were selling a boon from Hermes for 150 coins. I buy this and get the boon Hyper Sprint. This ability makes you sturdy after you dash. While sturdy, you take 30% less damage, and considering I'm always dashing around, makes for a pretty good boon. We then fight the most annoying boss in the game. I mean, I understand the concept, but when I have to dash around to do damage, I'm just constantly unable to move. I didn't even take that much damage, it's just really annoying. But I did get a nice boon in return. Demeter gave me Frozen Touch, which completely chills an opponent whenever they damage me, which just adds to the Ares boon we got earlier. We upgrade Thunder Dash for 8 more damage and High Voltage for a 90% radius increase instead of just 72, before we approach the final boss in Asphodel. In this run, I face Lerny. I went into this boss with only 75 health, so I was a little worried. I had pretty low health and I had lost about half of my attempts to this boss. I managed to clear the first third of the boss's health hitless, but during the second phase of its attack, I lose my Stubborn Defiance, so I was scared. But I was very focused during the rest of the fight, and it was very clean, and I managed to pull out on top. It was very close, though. I only managed to scrape by with 17 health remaining. But I will need some much better boons and a lot less mistakes if I want to finally escape. With my hands trembling a little bit, I heal up and head up into Elysium. Before we move on, this video took me many hours, so if you wouldn't mind liking the video and subscribing, I would appreciate it a ton. But moving back to Elysium, we start off strong with a boon from Hermes, giving us bonus damage for any increase in speed we come across. We also get 25 HP added to our max life, and our Thunder Dash gains 6 additional damage. This run has been going alright, but Elysium and the Temple of Styx are hard levels, so this next boon just really gave us the boost we needed to make this run great. I got Splitting Bolt, which is Zeus's legendary boon. Normally, this is a 1% chance, but in the Mirror of Darkness, I was able to raise the chance to 11%, so this isn't the craziest occurrence. This also isn't a blessed run that is destined to win. The effect isn't insane. All it does is fire bolts of electricity whenever you hit an enemy. That bolt isn't guaranteed to hit anything else, especially on bosses when you're only attacking one enemy. I've actually gotten this boon before and still died on that attempt, but it is still a very nice addition to our list of boons and very much appreciated. We pick up some money and actually find Patroclus, and I didn't realize this at the time, but he saved this run. Patroclus is one of the best NPCs in the game and offers game-changing rewards for players who find him. Patroclus offers 3 different options that you can choose from. The Hydrolite Gold, which restores health every time you enter a room for a couple of encounters. Cyclops Jerky Select, which raises your damage for the next few encounters, and the Touch of Sticks Dark, if you have Stubborn Defiance over Death Defiance, which makes it so Stubborn Defiance raises your health by 80% instead of the mere 30% you would normally get. And it does this for the next 15 encounters. I was at pretty high health and decided to pick the Touch of Sticks Dark instead of the Hydrolite Gold that I would normally get, as I normally play with Death Defiances that I haven't used by now. I upgraded my High Voltage so that the area of my dash is now at 113% as opposed to 90%, which made up for me losing a killing spree race against Thanatos. I then picked up some money and promptly spent it on some health up and food before entering the final boss fight in Elysium. This fight is hard. In my normal playthroughs of this game, I died to this boss probably more than anything else. The Minotaur gets up close and personal, dealing massive damage, while Theseus snipes you with his spear. If you manage to kill the Minotaur, Theseus still has his trick up his sleeve. He calls down a random god and uses their power to try and kill you. I would often activate this before killing the Minotaur, and I would just get absolutely obliterated by everything trying to kill me. So, we have to have a good strategy coming into this. I lured the monster away from Theseus and slowly whittled down its HP as I tried to avoid damage myself. Then I got to the Minotaur's second phase, and we really had to kick it into gear. Just kidding. The second phase is a joke and barely harder than the first phase. He gains a couple of new attacks, but I was able to completely take him down while losing less than half of my total HP. Now we move on to Theseus. Paired with the Minotaur, Theseus is a deadly adversary. While the bull occupies your time, Theseus sits in the back and snipes you with his spear, sometimes spinning if you get close enough. But when you take the brute force away and Theseus becomes the only source of damage, he isn't too hard to kill. The fact that he gets a God's Boon is scary, but since I only have to focus on Theseus and not a raging bull as well, I managed to take him down bit by bit and pass through the third level of hell. We collect our ambrosia and move forward to the final level. The final level isn't too hard, minus Dad, but we'll get to that later. The first part of the final level gives you a couple of gauntlets for some rewards and also a very expensive shop with boons and other goodies. This part of the game is mostly here to toughen and heal you up so that you have a little bit of a better chance to beat up your dad. I pick up a life up heart, some coinage, and a bag we can use to get rid of Cerberus before buying some crucial items in the shop. At this point, I have 658 coins, so I immediately buy a boon from Hermes and manage to find Quick Recovery as an epic boon. This lets you recover a bit of the damage you have taken every time you get hit, if you manage to dash in time. This is very nice, as we have a very limited amount of HP, and reducing the amount of damage certain attacks do is fantastic, especially since Hades focuses on big, high-damage attacks at a slower rate instead of quick, low-damage attacks. We also buy a Palm of Power for 100 coins, and manage to upgrade Thunderdash yet again and raise its power from 34 to 38. Feeling as ready as I'll ever be, I talk to Cerberus, take a deep breath, and enter the final chamber. Our dad is by far the hardest boss in the game, which makes sense, as he's the final boss. The first phase of his attacks was pretty simple. He gives enough warning before spinning his spear, and most of his other attacks are easy enough to avoid. We get him all the way down when, what? He's the second phase? And this is where the real fight begins. Hades' attacks grow stronger, and he gains several new attacks that are very dangerous, such as these lasers of death. I become very focused and manage to bob and weave my way through every attack, or simply hide behind a pillar. The fight goes on for a while, but I manage to bring his HP down slowly but surely until we've done it. We've defeated our father, and it's all thanks to this man, Patroclus. If we take a look at my health during the fight, we can see that I used Stubborn Defiance and got raised to 236 out of 295 health, when I should have only got raised to 89 out of 295 health. I ended the fight at a comfortable 137 health. So, I lost 99 HP after using Stubborn Defiance, which, by my calculations, is bigger than 89. Without my impulse decision to buy the Touch of Sticks Dark, we would have died and had to try this many more times before getting good enough RNG to get this far again. And with our journey finally complete, we have proved that it is in fact possible to escape hell without directly killing any enemies. We can walk up to our mom and have a lovely conversation with her while having a completely clean conscience. The Greek gods are most definitely being investigated for murder and many other crimes, but I'm sure they'll figure something out. Again, if you wouldn't mind showing your appreciation by liking the video and subscribing, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you have any challenge runs you'd like me to try, then comment them below, and I'll definitely give them a shot. Have a fantastic day. Bye.